It's a real pleasure to be here today. Thank you so much for having me along. I'm just going to try and tell you a little bit about an UPI, which is an out-of-program experience here I took and spent a reasonable amount of time with working for Urolink. This is St. Francis Hospital in Kitete, which is in Zambia, and this was one of the first placements that I started the year with. If those of you that don't know, Urolink's remit is to try and further urological practice throughout the world. I guess I was very new to this, and with the help of Susie Venn and several others, they gave me a remit to try and perform some audit in the locations in which I was working, try and do some TURP teaching, and generally provide a bit of a supportive role and a link back to the committee in the UK to see how each of the units were getting on. My first placement was in UTH, University Hospital, Teaching Hospital in Lusaka, Zambia. It's a large hospital. It's got 3 practicing consultants there, and it's a really quite a big unit with a very, very busy profile. This is Maria, one of the clinic nurses. This is one of the typical clinic environments there. Even have a urine flow meter. Doesn't quite look the same as in the UK, but it's extremely functional. This very, very busy clinic, 70 or 80 patients per morning or afternoon, and it's an absolute hive of activity there. Very, very busy clinicians. Here's the adjoining clinic room. Here they do trust biopsies, orchidectomies, often for prostate cancer, and these would all be done within the clinic environment. So just to give you a bit of an idea of the geography, Lusaka is down at the bottom, and there were peripheral hospitals, one in Kitete over to the east and Kabwe to the north. Kabwe is about 3 hours away, and Kitete is about 7 hours drive away, and consultants will go out there regularly, often once or twice a month, for a couple of days to go and perform peripheral clinics and operating lists. I was fortunate enough to be able to join them on one of these trips and really saw some stunning African scenery. I'd never been to Africa before, so this was a really unbelievable experience for me. We went to Kabwe, which is in the copper belt. Copper mining is one of the main incomes for Zambia, and again, very, very high population density there, busy hospital, and that's just 3 hours north of Lusaka. This was St. Francis Hospital, much smaller, out to Kitete in the east, and lots of Dutch doctors there, a very large international contingent of surgeons and clinicians working there, and it was a real pleasure to meet with colleagues from the rest of Europe and indeed the world, and do some work there for a few days. We drove for 7 hours, set off at 5 o'clock in the morning, and then did a 70-person outpatient clinic that afternoon. It was just, I don't think I've ever really experienced anything quite like it. We had a room with about 12 beds, and we just went round, and it was triage, deciding what to do for the next day, when we had an operating list, which looked much like this. 18 patients. We started at 8 o'clock in the morning and went on between 2 theatres for about 14 hours and finished at 10 o'clock at night. I will never, ever complain with any other on-call again in the UK. That was quite the day. This is what the operating theatre looked like. They had anaesthetic nurse practitioners there, very capable, very fast. You have to be to get through 18 patients in a day. And they've got a slightly interesting division there between the state-provided healthcare, which is ultimately free, and you have 2 or 3 people to a bed, or if you can afford it, you went to the high-cost ward where you got your own bed. Part of my teaching, part of my remit was to go and teach and mentor for TURP. I was between ST5 and 6 at the time, so I'd been signed off my TURP practice. So they had a model teaching unit there, and these were 3 of the senior trainees, and this is them in action thereafter. So that was quite a fun experience. You can see the fluid, the saline irrigation is in the metal canister at the top. Very innovative. It worked perfectly fine. Also performed some audit out there to try and give the Urolink committee back in London a bit of an idea of what the shape of their practice was. The idea being that they try and move the practice away from transvesical prostatectomies, which was still commonplace there, and to TURPs to reduce complications. I wrote an article about this in the Trends for Urology magazine. If you're interested, maybe go and seek it out, or indeed come and talk to me at the end. I'd be absolutely delighted to tell you a little bit more about it. I had the pleasure of attending the inaugural meeting of the Zambian Urological Society. It's their version of BAUS, and it looks a bit like this. And it was delightful. So, you know, all the stands were outside. It was sunny all day, and yeah, we had a lovely time. This was the great and the good of Zambian urology, trainees and all of the consultants for an entire country, which is, yeah, you're looking at them, that's quite amazing. Nenad Spasijevic was absolutely pivotal to my time out there. He was a fantastic host and invited me to a barbecue at the end, and off we went to go and watch the Zambian Rugby Sevens tournament, which was fantastic fun. I had 3 days in South Langwa National Park with some rather rudimentary but nonetheless exciting accommodation, and got to go on safari and see sunsets like this and animals like that. And yeah, an unbelievable experience. So that was Zambia, and then again it was time to go home. My next trip was to Tanzania, specifically Moshi, and near Mount Kilimanjaro, and KCMC, so the Kilimanjaro Christian Medical College. This is Teddy. He was a visiting fellow from Ethiopia, and they have a very busy teaching remit there. There will be general surgeons trained in other African countries, and they'll come to KCMC for a year to try and do a master's in urology, and then include urology in their future practice. Mr. Asim Chowdhury from Bedfordshire came out and ran a PCNL workshop, which I was lucky enough to attend. And teaching was one of my main activities out there, really. We had a 6:30 teaching session every morning before the ward round at 7:30, and we did that consistently for about a month. And I basically tried to use some of the register teaching slides, which I was given and I wrote over here as part of my training program, and gave them to the trainees out there. This was in the PCNL workshop. You can see Dr. Jacques Bogdanovic, who is a retired Dutch urologist who spends a lot of time out there, and the trainees are unbelievably keen to learn here. Dr. Jacques Bogdanovic and Asim Chowdhury at the end of the workshop. Some of you may be familiar with the work of Dr. Lester Eshelman, who set up the urology unit in KCMC. This is Dr. Jack Bogdanovic and Prof. Ruud Bosch from Holland, who came over to do a urethroplasty workshop, and Eshelman was absolutely pivotal to the development of urological practice in KCMC. This is Dr. Frank Bright with one of his senior trainees, and he is, again, an absolutely startling man, really. He was given a fellowship to go to medical school by the Tanzanian government in China, and he learnt Chinese. He did his entire medical training in Mandarin, then came back and now works as a full-time consultant in KCMC. I can't even imagine doing that. He's an extremely dedicated guy, motivated, and one of the friendliest humans I've ever met. This was during the urethroplasty workshop. I was all scrubbed in theatre, watching what Prof. Ruud Bosch was up to. This was a typical ward round, really busy, quite hierarchical, and the throughput in this ward is ridiculous. You almost rarely saw the same patient twice. As you can see, private practice was alive and well in Tanzania, which is good to know. And this was myself and Teddy. He became a real friend out there. Part of the work I tried to undertake was helping them write up their master's theses, which they had to do in this training year. And so I spent a lot of time in the afternoon sitting down with them and trying to go over it, set it up in a kind of a normal way, and help them write it up. English is not always their first language, and they struggled with things like that sometimes, so it was really nice to be able to do that. The CT scanner broke while I was repaired, so it was put on a trolley and rolled across the courtyard and taken for repair. I don't think I've ever seen a CT scanner in transit before. And also had some time to go to Zanzibar, which was an unbelievably fantastic place. I spent a week there, went up Mount Kili, did some kite surfing in Paje, and yeah, had a lovely time. And the final placement was in Ethiopia, in Hawassa, and it was, Hawassa is about 3 hours, about an hour south in the plane. It was about 6 hours on the bus. Again, got to see a lot of Africa, just south of Addis Ababa. And this is where I work with Dr. Abera, who's the old stalwart of the urology department there, and one of the new consultants, very motivated, intelligent guy, Dr. Getch Tesfaye, and it was a real honour to go and work with them. We did some stone surgery out there. This is myself with Dr. Abera in theatre. And again, they're developing their endourological practice there. They have a fantastic teaching setup, and this is their clinical skills lab where anaesthetists, surgeons, medics will all have the opportunity to develop their skills. And I think Getch Tesfaye is extremely keen on trying to get some of the Hawassan, the Addis Ababa trainees down to Hawassa because they don't have a formal urological training program there. And part of that is trying to develop a skills lab specifically for urology so that they can provide a training environment. To this end, I tried to, with the rest of the Urolink committee, devise a skills lab proposal and cost it and try and help them acquire trainees down there so that they can develop their practice. Another tool I tried to create at Susie Venn's request was this centre assessment tool, which it was an attempt to communicate the type of throughput that they have in each of the hospitals, their needs, their 1-, 3- and 5-year development plans. And I wrote these up and have sent them back to the Urolink committee so that we can try and understand what their needs are and also try and support them in the next 3 to 5 years in achieving those aims. Audit was a significant part of the practice, just to give, again, the Urolink committee an idea of the shape of their practice, their throughput, their waiting lists, and, again, trying to understand where we could help further. I was part of the doxorubicin protocol introduction out there, which we managed to source the doxorubicin and give these post-TURBTs, so that was another kind of small success. I wrote this up for Urology News, and again, as I said, if anyone is interested in spending some time with Urolink, please come and talk to me at the end, or have a look at this article and it'll give you a little bit more information. This was the lake in Hawassa. At weekends, used to sit there, read my BJUI and feed the monkeys nuts. It was an opportunity to see some of the local culture. This was the Siddhartha New Year. It's an ethnic group in Ethiopia, and yeah, a very vibrant cultural scene there. This is Lucy, the oldest human on the planet, and I got to have a little look around the museums in Addis Ababa thereafter, and that was quite an interesting experience. At the end of the year, I pursued another personal interest, which was a bit of expedition medicine. One of my friends runs this XR Medics in Bristol, and I had the opportunity to go and provide the medical cover for the Ultra Gobi, which is a 400-kilometre foot race, unsupported across the Gobi Desert, and 2 British guys actually won it. And this is what it looked like there, a real lunar landscape. And I went and did the Diploma of Mountain Medicine with the Royal College of Surgeons of Edinburgh, and again got to try and provide, deliver some medical care in austere environments. Went back to Kilimanjaro to work with a search and rescue helicopter there for a couple of weeks. So in summary, how was the year of value for me? Well, I think it really taught me how to improvise and overcome challenges. Urolink's aims for audit, teaching, and trying to develop the practice there, I felt like I didn't always meet those expectations, and I was originally quite disheartened about that, and spoke to Miss Venn about it, and she said, actually, just, don't worry about that. This is an ongoing process. What we want to do is to keep you involved throughout the rest of your career. You're not going to be able to achieve these things in one visit, and I think that's true. I think the eyes open, mouth shut is the most important message, really, because there are lots of really experienced and motivated clinicians there working already, and swanning in is a kind of a foreign trainee with your own agenda and trying to impose it on people who are working really hard on a daily basis to try and achieve their own aims is an entirely disingenuous thing to do, really. I think you have to come there with a kind of open mind and be humble and see how you can help them, not impose your agenda on them. I think trying to understand local expectations prior to departure would be a really valuable thing to do. And I think Graham Watson is doing a lot of work on this, but trying meeting their ongoing needs from the UK. They can't afford or are not able to buy things like TURP loops. When they break, that's it. The TBRP's over, then they go back to TVPs. And maintaining this in a sustainable way is really a thing that I think is extremely important. I had an incredible and life-affirming experience. I felt I can't wait to go back in my future career, and I really hope I can stay involved with Urolink, and it's been such an honour and absolute pleasure to meet such lovely people that I have this year. I'd like to thank all of the above for their involvement in this opportunity, and indeed thank Urolink for both financial, physical, emotional support during my time away, and I'd be happy to take any questions at the end, or if any of the trainees are keen on doing something like this, I'd be delighted to talk to you about it. Thank you very much.